Hey, I'm Jacinta Daniel, writer, speaker, and host of Polished Gems. This podcast is for the ones rebuilding their faith, rediscovering their purpose, and returning to God, one fruit of the Spirit at a time. If that's you, hit subscribe and join the journey, because healing is possible and your faith story isn't finished yet. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Polished Gems. I'm your host, Jacinta Daniel, and we're doing something a little differently this time for especially the podcast episodes where it's just myself. One thing that we're doing different for the month of December is I have a three-part series that I want to talk to you guys about, which is called Mastering Self-Control Through the Holy Spirit, a Step-by-Step Growth Series. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're slowing down this month and we're letting God train us from the inside out, teaching us how to be steady, how to choose wisely, and how to walk with a spirit-led strength that does not crumble when life gets loud. And if you've ever been pulled by your emotions, by your habits, or old patterns, what I want you to do is take a deep breath, because you are not alone and you're not behind. God is patient with your process, and He delights in every small step that you take. So today, let's gather our courage and open our hearts and even our minds so we can grow together, one step, one choice, one gentle moment at a time. So today's topic, or part one in this series, is consistency and self-control. How to stay faithful when the motivation fades. So let's talk about that. So I'm going to start with me. One of my particular moments where the motivation faded was actually when I first started this podcast. I started this podcast, I believe, 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and those old episodes are still over on Spotify. You can actually check them out. God was like, okay, I need you to start a podcast. And I was like, okay, we're already doing blogs. We're already writing. I was able to finally get some guest bloggers to come on and was getting some consistency with that. And I'm like, you need me to add a thing? And God was like, yes, I need you to add podcasting. So I remember I took it seriously, his instructions seriously, and sat down and went, okay, God, you already know I feel overwhelmed with already the blogs some days, but sure, tell me how I'm supposed to do this. Let me know, what platform I'm supposed to put it out on, and can I use my guest bloggers from time to time, the ones that are willing? Like, what am I able to do here? So I sat down and got clarity. During that kind of clarity session, God gave me the instructions of using a simple platform where I could just record my voice and upload. I could download the file if I needed to, extract it, the audio file, that is, and I could even upload it to the podcast and share it over on Spotify. So it actually went out to Spotify and I believe some other platforms, if I'm not mistaken. And that particular platform at the time was kind of new and all inclusive, and people were kind of testing it out and using it. And I can't even think of the name of the platform right now. But yes, I used that. And his specific instruction was take the blogs, turn them into podcast conversations where we could talk more about the blog. We could talk about why did the author write it the way they did? What lessons did they learn? Because we would always write about lessons of the fruit of the spirit, and we would also write about how God taught us lessons in practical ways. So that was like seriously what we do now is what we did then, but we do it in a very, very different format as of now. But long story short, what ended up happening was um, it was becoming tougher and tougher to be consistent at. And I was getting frustrated with it. I was getting so frustrated with it that I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't even know if we can keep going. So what you'll see is there was a break that I took where I literally put the podcast down. I didn't think I could keep going, and I did not think that I could continue. So in my frustration, I just put it to the side. And in God fashion, God was like, He let me put it down, but that was never his intent. And because that was never his intent, because he was growing something in me, what he wanted me to do was instead of laying it down, to ask him, am I in a season of pivoting? Am I frustrated because maybe we do need to take a short break, but in that short break, I need to sit with you and pivot on, is this the same format? Is this the same platform? Do we need to do anything different? Maybe my schedule needs to change in how I record this or what. Like it could have been little changes, but I never sought God's instruction or face concerning it and what was his heart as well. So it was not until more so recently, I want to say September, no, August, it may have been August or something of this year or a couple months before August, where God was like, you need to pick back up the podcast again. And I was like, oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Like, okay. And he sent confirmation. So a couple of my friends, close mentors, peers, stuff like that, just kept saying, yeah, you need to bring the podcast back. Yeah, you need to do this again. And I was just like, okay, God, okay. And I sat down for him. I said, so what's the new format? What platform are we supposed to be on? And all that. And when I tell you, God started answering, God started answering. So this is why we're back. This is why we're back. What I realized in the midst of my frustration is that God was trying to teach me how to endure. I realize that now. I didn't see it then, but He was trying to teach me consistency moves into endurance. But you got to learn to be consistent to understand how to endure. And I didn't realize that all I had to do was ask him about pivoting. All I had to do was ask him, where was this frustration coming from? And what do I do about it? Like, do I lay it down for a minute or do I need a break to step away and ask you some more questions? I should have asked him, how can I still be consistent instead of just starting and stopping a thing, and especially with this podcast. So now that you've learned more about this podcast, and here we are today, what I wanted to share with you is the scripture foundation for tonight. It is Hebrews 12 and 11, and that's in the, I believe, NIV version. And it basically talks about discipline produces a harvest of righteousness. And what it says is no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. What I want you to understand and just reflect upon, even with that Bible verse, is consistency is less about hype. It's more about spirit grown habits and developing those over and over and over, okay? One thing, let's talk about what consistency really is. So, I'm going to give you three principles to kind of hold on to and to kind of grasp. Principle number one is this: consistency is a choice, not a feeling. In anything that God calls us to do, like even picking back up this podcast, I have had days where I was super sad and I couldn't figure out why. And God was like, still go record the podcast. And I have done just that. I recorded the podcast. I have done it even when I felt horrible, even when I wasn't sure, even on days that I was just like, God, I don't even know. What's interesting is there have been times that when I wasn't sure or didn't know, what God would do is say, okay, go eat something first, then record the podcast, or take a few minutes, like 10 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on what you need, and then get back up and do it. Like he was letting me know that there are ways to still be consistent even when I feel bad. Principle number two that I want to share with you is this: you don't rise to your goals, you actually fall to your systems. So, what systems do you have in place currently for the things that God has asked you to do? See, for me, I fell to the system of my frustration rather than be consistent at the system of, okay, if I'm feeling frustrated, let me turn to God and go, why am I feeling frustrated? Explain this to me. I just acted on, well, since I'm frustrated and I can't figure out what's going on, I'm just going to take a break. I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. How many times have you done that with friends, with family, with assignments that God has given you or people God has given you to steward? A lot of times when we get frustrated, it's not the time to hide or to let it go or put people aside or task aside that God is instructing. It might not be a lay it down season. You actually might be in where God needs you to ask some more questions, where God needs you to seek his face because the frustration is coming from somewhere. So, time to learn more about it. And principle number 3 that I want you to have is God honors the steady before he multiplies the spectacular. God is always looking for us to be consistent, even consistent when it comes to him. What I mean by that, he's not looking for the spectacular of you doing things out of the norm or that it has to be this one off special thing for him. What if it's he just wants you to understand self control in your eating habits because your body is his temple? What if it's as simple as he wants you to make sure you get dressed every day, even if you work from home? Put on some clothes because he knows it will make you feel better. And in you feeling better, you'll want to talk to him instead of pushing him aside or others aside as well. We think it has to be these spectacular moments. And can God make spectacular moments happen? Of course. This is the God that made the sun, the moon, the stars, the sea, all that in it is. Like, this is the same God that said, let there be light, and there was light. God is great and amazing at the spectacular, but he also honors the consistent and the steady. So, I want to share with you all some practical tools because I don't want you to just have those principles and be like, oh, okay, that's great. Now, what do I do with this? Let's actually look at some practical tools. I'm going to share with you mine that God helps me with and gives me. I use what he has called just simply the 30-minute rule. Just start for 30 minutes. Whatever task, whatever assignment it is, 30 minutes. So, the ways that you can learn to apply this: define your task or your assignment. So, for me, it was the podcast, right? Pick back up the podcast again. Yours might be you need to write a book, or you might need to study for something, for an exam, or even if you need to drink more water. It could be really that simple. Define the task or the assignment that God is asking of you. Then let's scale it down. Let's shrink that task or that assignment down to 30-minute intervals. So we're not overwhelming ourselves or our system, right? We're not trying to work in anxiousness. We're trying to work with the flow of God. The next thing is to commit to the start of it. Commit only to performing the task or action every day or every other day, regardless of how you feel. Or it has to be whatever schedule works best for you. If you're not sure what that schedule is, I always say this: ask God, okay? Because he knows your schedule, your time, when you need to make money, when you need to sit down and rest. Like, he knows you better than you, so he's the best person to ask. The other thing is master the art of just showing up for those 30 minutes. Even if it's hard for you to write something, even if it's hard for you to drink water, because man, sometimes you're not feeling it. Even if it's hard to study or focus on studying, and even if it's, let's say it's increasing your prayer life. Let's say it is hard in those 30 minutes because now you're scrolling on your phone, okay? But let's show up. Don't worry about the intensity or even the full duration of it, because I know you're like 30 minutes seems like a long time. Focus purely on building the routine and reinforcing it as well, okay? So I'm gonna give you some examples of showing up habits. I kind of said them throughout, but I'm gonna reiterate them here. So let's say your task or assignment is that you need to complete a book. The 30-minute rule, here's what you would do. You would carve out a writing schedule. It would be 30 minutes each day. or night if night is better for you, because night for some people is totally fine. But for me, I typically get up early in the morning, so that's way way too late for me to be writing or trying to focus on writing. Now, if each day is also too intense, do every other day or ask God, can I just start with 1 day a week and bump it up to two? Like bump it up accordingly. You can always readjust, okay? Let's say your task is studying for an exam. Here's how you would do it with the 30-minute rule. You would go to the library or some place where you can actually focus. If it's your house, great. If it's not, get up and go to a library or a coffee shop and study a section or a chapter that you're going to be tested on for that exam. And that's 30 minutes. And again, you can pick how often. Is that every day for you, or does it need to be every other day, or are weekends the only time you have? You can do multiple 30-minute intervals as well, okay? What I mean by that is if let's say the weekend is the only time you have available to study because you work Monday through Friday. Well, then take 30 minutes if you're able to, and you do multiple 30-minute intervals. So that would mean you study for 30 minutes, stop, take a break, study for another 30 minutes. Let's say you want to go to 4 hours. I can explain that for my real estate exam. I think they gave us about 4 hours worth of time allotted. I wanted to know what that felt like. So I would actually stay at the library for 4 hours. I did not study consecutively for 4 hours because that was a lot. But I was training myself to sit there for 4 hours to get used to that on my body as well. Because that test was a mental thing, but it was also material too. The other thing, another task, just to give you an example, is let's say you need to drink more water, and God's like, for your health, just up your water intake, like drink more of it. So, what you can do is start a timer for 30 minutes, multiple times out of the day. Let's say morning, afternoon, and evening just to start. Let's keep it real simple. So you have a 30-minute timer in the morning, a 30-minute timer in the afternoon, and a 30-minute timer in the evening. And when those alarms go off, you go ahead and drink water. There are simple ways to do the things that God is asking us to do and learn how to be consistent with them. I'm going to give you one more example. Let's say it's increasing your prayer life. What you can do is read your Bible and pray with actual worship music. I love worship music instrumentals on YouTube that are 30 minutes long. That way, when those are over, I know my 30 minutes is up. So that could be something that you also use or implement as well. Once you start your 30-minute action steps, momentum takes over, and you'll more likely be able to continue the task or assignment until it is complete. Because remember, I said consistency builds up your endurance. Even if you only do the 30 minutes, you still get a win. You logged a win for that day, and it builds the critical foundation of consistency, which definitely becomes endurance over time. I want to give you another way. So that was how you can do the 30-minute rule and apply it. I want to give you some other things that are helpful. Another thing God had me do is called habit pairing. Now, what is habit pairing? Basically, it's where you're doing two things simultaneously. Um, so I'll give you the 30-minute rule or the 30-minute interval that I was using and that God gave me as instruction. So his idea was for me to drink my coffee, which takes me about 30 minutes to make it and enjoy drinking it. So that's 30 minutes time total. My task to pair with it was actually writing my book and using that as my book writing time. Most people will often use their coffee time for worship or reading their Bibles as a way to spend much needed time with God and get that time in. That is great as well. That's another example. What God had to let me know was me writing the book was my worship time. And here's why it was, because he said I needed to communicate with him on how to write each chapter of the book. So we would engage in conversation. I had questions about how does this chapter go? How do I need to write this? And that would allow me to still get in my connected time with him. Let's talk accountability cues and what you can use to actually implement this 30-minute rule. So the first is visual reminders. Your Google Calendar, your Apple Calendar, even a dry erase board calendar that you can put up on the wall, which can be updated. Because on your Google Calendar or even Apple calendars, you can put block time like from 7 to 7:30 or 3 to 3:30, whatever the time is. You'll know that's the time on the calendar that you stop and drink your water or that you worship with the Lord, whatever the case may be. Okay. The other thing that's a great accountability cue for us is our alarms. So the alarms on your phone, like how I was talking about setting an alarm to know to drink water in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, if that's how you need to increase your water intake, that you can set those multiple alarms and those will go off in your notifications or on your iPad or tablet or wherever you'll be able to see them. And even people have their watches. Even seeing it sometimes on your watch go off, it reminds you to stop what you're doing real quick or pick up your water. The other accountability cue that you can also use is sticky notes. I know we don't use those as much anymore, but for for some people, those colors, especially the really, really colorful ones, not just the yellow one, excuse me, not just the yellow ones, but the ones that have the pink, the green, the blue, those fun colors help make sure that you see it, right? You know that, okay, I need to drink my water at this time, or I need to write the book at this time. Just make sure you put them in a place where you'll actually see the sticky note and won't bypass it or ignore it as well. Now, the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to this 30-minute rule is grace resets. How to restart without the shame. I had to do that with this podcast. I had to restart without the shame, without being like, oh man, I waited so long to restart this. God, are you even going to do anything with this? Because I didn't pick it back up. I had to let go of the shameful feeling of not thinking, oh man, I maybe I missed my opportunity or maybe I missed my window. Because you got to remember, we serve the God that made the sun, the moon, the stars, and all that it is. But it also recently happened to me again, my grace reset. I was doing so well, so well with my book schedule that God gave me. See, what He gave me was to block out 1 hour time on my Google Calendar. I think it was from 7 to 8, if I'm not mistaken. And I would write for two 30-minute intervals with a break in between. So I would sit down and write for 30 minutes after my coffee. And this was my pairing. After my coffee was finished, I would sit down and write for 30 minutes, take a quick little break, write for another 30 minutes. So in all, I at least had about an hour of writing. And the reason why this was done in the morning, 7 a.m. in the morning, is because I usually am up by 5:30 a.m., sometimes even earlier. And by 7 p.m. at night, I am tired and exhausted after getting the kids home, figuring out what we're eating for dinner, making sure everyone has showered, brushed their teeth. I'm exhausted. So writing at night is out of the question, and God knew it. But He's like, you once you've dropped them off at school, you do have a little bit of time. And I was like, all right. But what happened was my son got sick. He got sick for about a week, I believe, and that threw off all of my schedule because I was writing for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 days. So an hour, 30-minute intervals, two 30-minute intervals, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, excuse me, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times a week. And when I tell you, I was so sad afterward. I was so mad at myself. I was like, I finally got into this mode of consistency and I was just so frustrated. I said, God, but I had to help my son. Like, I was just having this conversation, pleading with God, going, God, I hope you're not mad at me. I really was trying to do it this time. And da 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 da. And I was mad at myself, and God was like, but you're a mom. I was like, huh? He's like, but you're a mother. And helping your son was more important than the book. When he said that, I was like, oh my goodness. I said, thank you, God, for just understanding. Because sometimes we do live in a world or in a society where it seems like people don't understand that. So for God to understand, when when I tell you, I was so grateful. And I said, so God, what do I do now? I said, I feel like I'm so off track. What do I do now? He said, not a problem. What I need you to do is recover first from helping your son because you need to take, if not 3 days to about a week yourself to recover from helping him recover. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I can ease back into everything, my routine, getting back into the book writing and all that. He's like, yeah, that will work. And I said, so should I do the same 2 30-minute intervals? And should it be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday still, or do I need to change the days? He actually ended up having me change the days. I think it went Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I think it went down to 2 days. So I didn't feel overwhelmed. And I can't remember if it went down to 30 minutes versus the hour. Like he really had me reduce it to build it back up. Sometimes we forget that. And here's what he had crossed my mind just now as I'm sitting here telling you guys this. Just like people who go to the gym and build up muscle, right? They start from 5 pound weights all the way up, let's say to whatever their maximum is, right? And I'm just going to use 5 to 100 just for this example. And what I saw was what happens when that same bodybuilder or person that lifts weights, let's say they have an injury, unexpected, didn't see it coming, and they can't lift that 100 pounds anymore. It is okay for them to go back to the 5 and build back up the endurance to get back into their consistency. I think a lot of times we think of consistency as I have to keep going at 100 pounds. I can't go back to the 5. But what God has shown me is it's okay to go back, but keep going. And sometimes it might not be go all the way down to the 5. For some of us, it might not be an injury. It might not be anything so severe that we have to go all the way back to 5. But what if it's as simple as we skipped a couple of days and our arms are sore? Then go down 5 pounds or go down 10 pounds and still show up. So I just wanted to give you that scenario as well, that it is okay to recover. The last thing I want to give you I want to give you this challenge, actually. Over the next 7 days, ask God what is one thing that you need to be consistent in. So go, God, what is one thing I need to be consistent in for the next 7 days? That's the question I want you to ask him. Then I want you to define it. If he goes, all right, write a book. If you need more clarity, ask God, what is the task or assignment I need to complete then when it comes to that book? Or if it's studying for an exam and you need more clarity, where should I go so I can complete my study session? Okay. So just get the clarity as you define the task and then schedule it. Remember those accountability cues? If you need sticky notes, your Google Calendar, your alarms on your phone, ask God, how should you schedule it? That also, excuse me, that's setting the cue. Set the accountability cue and ask God what accountability cue will work best for me. And then the last thing I want you to do is schedule it. What that means is ask God, how should I schedule it? Or is it 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, so forth and so on. If it's 3 days a week to start, then it's 3 days a week. If he needs you to do it all 7 days, then it's all 7 days. Ask how he needs you to schedule it. And the last thing I wanted to do was give you a gem to remember. That consistency does not demand perfection, it only demands your presence. Consistency doesn't demand perfection, it doesn't demand your perfection, it only demands your presence. Well, that's the word that I want to leave you with. But before we close, one other final reminder is that growth doesn't happen in giant leaps. It actually happens in spirit led steps. Every time you pause, surrender, or even choose differently, heaven leans in and says, yes, that's it. Keep going. Thank you for joining me on this journey of mastery, self control through the power of the Holy Spirit. Carry today's gem with you. Let it settle deep in your hearts and your minds, and meet me for the next step in the series as we keep leaning in, as we keep stretching and becoming who God always knew we could be. Until then, walk gently, stay rooted, and remember you are growing. You are growing, and God is proud of who you are becoming. And remember, 30-minute intervals. See you guys on the next episode of this series in Polished Gems. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Bye.